Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
Hey there, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast, the number one industry-related podcast in the universe. Thank you very much for joining, because this platform, the Industrial Talk platform, is dedicated to you, the industrial professionals, the companies that get it done. You're bold, you're brave, you dare greatly. You're changing the world and you're changing lives. That's why we celebrate you. We want to feature the best in industry, and there are tons. So my plate of great industrial professionals completely full, and we got another great interview from a gentleman by the name of David Whitfield. You might have heard the company, Infor, and he's with the EAM Group, Enterprise Asset Management. Great product, great people, great company, everything about it. Let's get rolling. Yep. I am a big fan of Infor. I like their platform. I like what they do. I like the people that keep building it and the knowledge that they bring. David does not disappoint, most definitely. Enterprise Asset Management. If that is not a technology, if that's not a solution that helps you manage risk, right? Save money, make money. I mean, it is. You need that technology. You need that tech. All right. Once again, we're going to continue to feature companies, feature individuals that help you survive, right? Rebuild, prosper, because you got to be around. Please, you got to be around. And you've got to manage risk, retain talent. You got to save money, make money, and you got to be more resilient. So everybody that we talk to, those are the conversations we have. And you need to collaborate, not just internally. That's an easy one. What are you doing externally too? Collaborate. There are some great individuals, companies that want you to succeed. We got to innovate. Now, Infor is a classic example of a company that pushes the envelope on innovation. They've got people that are just incredible thinkers about what they do, right? No doubt about it. Innovation. But you're also going to have to innovate with your organization. It's not just a technology. It's across the board, especially now, especially in this COVID world that we live in, right? Got to innovate. And then thirdly, you got to educate. I don't care where you're at. The old way of doing, business is not today. You got to be innovative when it comes to your education solutions, what you're learning, how you're using it. Man, it just goes on and on. And here on the podcast, here on this platform, we feature these great thinkers that are there just specifically to help you, to provide the information that you need to do and to expand and grow. That's what they're all about. And you got to do it with speed. No doubt about it. You can't lollygag. You got to do it with speed. You got to take action. You got to move forward. And you got to be willing to make mistakes. Please, don't be frightened of making mistakes. That's when the greatest learning occurs. Get back up. Do it again. Move forward. Collaborate. Innovate. Educate. Speed. Execute. Fall down. Repeat. That's what we're all about. David is on the interview today. David Whitfield, Infor EAM is the conversation, what we're talking about. And boy, I'm telling you, that technology does exactly that. Go out to industrialtalk.com, right? You can find out more about the Industrial Academy, where we're collaborating with industry professionals such as David. You could go out and find the Industrial Reporter, and that is just a collection of great articles focused on your success. That's right, Industrial Reporter. It's all out there on industrialtalk.com. God, we're passionate about. You got to be around. We can't just. I can't cover it anymore. I'm just telling you. We just love what you guys are doing. So anyway, here's David. Thank you very much for joining again the Industrial Talk Podcast. Enjoy the interview. Hey, welcome, David, to the Industrial Talk Podcast. How are you doing? Thank you very much for joining. I know it's another day in Australia, but it's evening here. So what does tomorrow look like?
Well, look, the weather lately has been up and down, so hoping tomorrow looks like a fine day for me. But thanks for inviting me, Scott, and it's a pleasure to be here.
All right. For the listeners out there, give us a little background of where you come from and why you're such an incredible professional, and then we're going to get into the conversation.
Well, my background actually hails from the electrical industry. So my area of expertise, I guess, from the floor would be from that particular industry. But my role right now is as a principal solutions consultant for Infor. And I concentrate on enterprise asset management and the solutions that we provide to these heavy asset intensive industries surrounding not only utilities, where I came from, but transport, across utilities, water, across facilities management, that sort of thing.
One of the things about these heavy asset laden type of businesses is the the importance of it. Like let's just take, for example, water, right? You got to get that thing nailed down. You can't have failures within you're dealing with water. You can't, and it's so important to be able to manage those assets properly and be able to do it with a level of confidence and skills. That's for doggone sure. Now, as we start talking about it, the elephant in the room, David, is let's say the virus. Do you see anything that is taking place within heavy industry, within utilities in general? Do you see anything being impacted by that event, that pandemic?
Look, absolutely. And if I can peel this back to how we, provide services to the community, whether it's a water service or an electricity service, it's about the reliability of that. And in case of, certainly in the case of water, quality of that water. When we've looked at how this virus that has impacted our lives and has spread so easily from an airborne perspective, then the processes and procedures that we wrap around the maintenance of assets in order to keep water quality clear, clean, and bacteria-free has really hit home hard. And again, getting to the technology that we have that enables people to, collect masses of data and analyze masses of data, whether that's around the asset condition itself or the output of that asset itself, is absolutely being pushed to the forefront right now, I believe.
I believe. I think there's a necessity to do more with less. And when you start talking about doing more with less, that is sort of more of a data-driven model. And you're going to have to be able to make decisions, tactical decisions, based off of real data that is being captured by systems that are doing it correctly. And in the case of utility assets, absolutely. Big
100%. 100%.
The thing about the EAM, the Enterprise Asset Management System, it's heavily invested too in maintenance and applying the proper maintenance at the right time with the data and everything that is supposed to, and trigger the proper maintenance at the right time. This is where it's interesting with the pandemic, is that I find businesses, unfortunately, down to a skeleton crew. Maintenance is being impacted just because they just don't have the ability to be able to do that. Do you find a potential issue going forward where maintenance had not been done properly and moving forward?
Look, you're absolutely correct here, and this all gets down to one of the core attributes of asset management strategy and policy. It's all about risk. So when you have capability taken away from you, whether it's capability to get access to an asset or capability to apply the right strategies and procedures to an asset, then you have to ascertain what that risk is and how that is elevated to the service that the asset provides. And if you look at technologies and prior to COVID-19 striking across the globe, there were already technologies that were being used to be able to get access to assets and procedures that we never really had access to or was difficult. Drones are one of them. And in particular, I remember we were talking and partnering with a company that was looking at tethered drones. Now, you might be thinking, and the listeners might be thinking, why the heck would I want to tether a drone? Well, the reason you want to tether a drone is that if you've got a cable that's hanging from a drone couple of things happen here. One is that you can fly that drone in places that you could not normally fly a non-tethered drone. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. The second thing is the cable that comes down from that drone allows you to suck more data from what the drone is sensing. So if the drone has got forward-looking radar, infrared, it's got sound, it's got all these different sensors on, the thing can be heavier, it can have more gear, and you can get access to more elements of the asset condition and data that you normally couldn't get. And the third thing is, if it's got a cable to it, it can stay up there for a long time. So COVID is making people think about these technologies in a new and different way, and how to, if you like, overlay that across their foundational asset strategies. And that's just one example with the drones.
I think drone is pretty cool. I mean, you're like you said, man, it gets to a point where you're able to access locations that normally you would not be able to access, but then the technology that is associated with that particular drone is more sophisticated too. It's not a camera, which is a camera, but there's a lot of other diagnostic equipment that can be attached to that drone and be able, in a matter of whatever minutes, how long it takes to fly a drone around a particular asset, determine the health.
Agreed. That's right. It's also about data density as well. So if you look at the technology that's coming out, like what we offer in the marketplace, we have an artificial intelligence. You have the ability to do machine learning and put that across your data sets. Having a drone go up there for 10 minutes and pull back 1.5 million data points or data readings is feeding that technology and giving you the ability to have those data-driven insights a lot earlier and a lot quicker than you would if you're putting, guys out there that are taking manual inspections and things like this.
See, what's interesting from a utility perspective too, and we had this conversation prior to the podcast, a lot of the assets outside of the generating assets where you've got your turbines, got your generators, got things that are spinning. Yeah, okay, I got it. I know there's a lot of wear and tear on an asset that is spinning. But a lot of the asset, the portfolio within a utility company, things don't spin. They're transformers, they're condensers, they're wires, they're towers, and they're really, in essence, static. And when you start talking about assets and going down to, let's say, a distribution level assets, same thing. There's a tremendous amount of hierarchy that can exist within that particular asset registry. And the challenge is how do you apply a data-driven asset management type of approach to static assets?
Absolutely. So in the last example I talked about risk. And when you're looking at line type assets that can affect upstream or downstream, you bring in another element now, which is criticality. So criticality of an asset is the consequences of failure if that asset should fail in a number of ways. And it gets back to the principles of old RCM. But again, with the technology that we've got, those static assets now across, let's call it a linear asset, for instance, like a transmission or a distribution line, can have sensors and different types of monitoring systems that allow you to predict that. And the idea being is that because these assets are also geographically displaced, it is expensive to get a guy to go up there, sometimes travel up at mountainous terrains to get to the asset and do a check or a visual or an infrared camera. It's the technology that comes to the rescue here. So again, it's that condition-based and real-time monitoring that we can actually pull back in from those assets. Now, it doesn't apply to all of them, absolutely, but certainly the technology leaps and bounds for that side of asset. That type of asset has really sort of given a bit of a height to the problem of managing those static assets that you talk about.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the way the Infor platform, the architectural approach to the EAM solution, right? It's like you have a core and then you have these sort of nodes that you can apply, because if I'm in the water world, I I'm going to need water sort of centric type of architecture with my system. And if I'm in the transportation world, it's the same thing. But the core, what is fascinating, stays somewhat, that's the heart.
It does. So we have a great solution within Infor, which is our operating services platform. And this allows us to incorporate an integration set of tools that traditionally you would have to buy in as a second, third party and stitch these things together. It goes one further though. So we're talking about the assets. We've talked about linear and utilities and water. And yes, to my heart as an engineer, the asset is core. But now we're being asked to leverage and overlay other sorts of data sources. And I'm talking data sources such as the weather. We want social Twitter feed that's overlaid based on, what does the public think of us as a water supplier based on that outage of broken pipe water that we had a couple of months ago, things like this. And it's the integration layer that we provide that allows us to bring all those layers across and get a complete holistic 365 or even Joe Public view of how are we doing with our asset management, but more importantly, how are we providing that service to the public or to the citizen or to the customer that the asset is supposed to provide?
See, that's real important because that's never really been the case. Let's just be candid here. Utilities tend to be very old. Assets have a long life. And quite frankly, if you're a utility company, you might have cared about what people think, but you really don't have to worry about it because nobody's going to come in and say, hey, I'm taking your customer. It doesn't work that way.
It's changing. It's changing a lot. I mean, PwC did a digital IQ survey. It was about a year and a half ago now, and they reckoned, they came up with those results, and their reckoning was that 82% of the asset-intensive industries had put a heavier focus on the way technologies would affect the human experience. The human experience. Now, that was the experience from their own people within the organization and the customers they serve. So if you reverse engineer that back from the customer or the human experience, that touches a whole lot of processes within an organization that, remember, is an asset-intensive organization. And that's where we bring services and products and solutions that help our customers manage that human experience.
It's an interesting way of looking at it because being an old journeyman lineman myself, that was never really the case. You just kept the lines up, the power pump and lines up. Get called out in the middle of the night if something happened, and that was your role. And so it's interesting to see how really the digitization of every aspect of your life is impacting it. And it really is sort of an ability to be able, for me, John Q. Public, be able to have a say-so or a voice within a very interesting, business model, a monopolistic business model. It's fascinating. So with that said, where do you see this whole push going forward? So we've talked about what we can do today. Where do you see it going forward as an EAM enterprise type of deal?
It's a great point you make, and I take on board your experience there as a linesman of what it used to be like, and I have some similar experiences. But things are changing. I mean, maintenance, the maintenance activity, the maintenance department, the maintenance effort was considered a necessary evil, and it had been considered that way for quite some time. And I think we are going through, in fact, I can see it because when we talk to customers they come to us with their business requirements, they ask for this more and more and more. And that is that the paradigm shift of seeing the maintenance department and maintenance effort as a cost center is leaving, is going. They're seeing it as almost a profit center because they have a wealth of information centered around the asset data that's going to lead them into where they want to go in the future. And that's be more predictive, be more prescriptive, and to do this with a surety. So rather than just, a crusty engineer like myself saying, look, based on the last, 2 years or something, I think that's probably going to fail around about December next year. That's not good enough. What we want to do is use this technology, again, as I've said, use the data to be able to give us those data-driven insights. And this is pushing the business value of maintenance outside of the maintenance world. We're feeding decision strategies that are being made by the finance department. We are feeding decision strategies that are being made by the HR department, because if we can improve those sorts of asset performances, then, do we really need to have 12 of these asset lines and 12 of these technicians, et cetera, to run what we're doing in our business? So you can see that the maintenance effort is now moving into different areas of the business as a value add.
Yeah, which is a really shift in, because the way I always looked at maintenance from a financial perspective, it's a $1 for $1. I spend $1 up here, $1 off. And then when you start talking about utilities or waters or anything like that, you want to try to figure out how to sweat the asset as long as you possibly can, because you don't want to spend the dollars. And then you have that issue. The other thing is that it also translates back into, if you could do it properly, it also translates into your inventory. Do I really need that pump? Do I really need it right now? Or am I doing such a great job so I don't have to have that pump, invest that capital, get it in there and stick it in a warehouse? I have a better way, a more proactive way of dealing with that asset too, as well. And that comes through data.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that magic word there, capital, and one of the battles I had when I was managing a maintenance budget, I was always trying to justify the capital, but it was usually based on my OPEX that I'd actually spent. And my previous statement that I just made about influence the finance side of the business is no truer in this area. Nearly all our customers always have some sort of capability requirement around inventory management. And if you dig deeper, a lot of our customers cite as a business pain that we have, 3 or 4 factories, 3 or 4 power stations, 3 or 4 whatever, that share the same assets, and therefore theoretically can share the same inventory. But do they? No, they don't. We have 6 of them here, 10 of them over there, another 10 of them over here. So again, it's having that insight into where you can make those savings, but also then feeding it back into longer term supply chain strategies.
Yes.
So not only are you talking about sweating those assets and doing it with risk, criticality, and causality in mind, we're also doing it in mind of, what do I need to have on the shelf to make sure that I'm not caught short, but that I'm not overstocking? And that is huge savings, huge savings. When you think about a bearing or a pump can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars on the big stuff, you want to rationalize that inventory as much as you can.
Yeah, you're spot on, Biddy. Spot on, because and I've got to mention it again. Well, you mentioned it, is that all of a sudden it's a maintenance. It's not, money thrown down the toilet. There's really some logic around it, and it can be used in a way of being able to make your business a better business and save money, or be more efficient, or create greater uptime so you can produce more widgets, whatever it might be. You're just in a better doggone situation, most definitely. Do you find any resistance? Let's say, and this is just sort of more of a personal thing. When I always look at these utilities, many of them have been working there since the beginning of time, and there's a reluctance or unwillingness to agree, or I do maintenance this way and this is how I do it, as opposed to, hey, you got to rethink that. Do you find anybody pushing back on what the EAM platform does?
Look, the short and simple answer to that is yes, but let's discover why that is the case, and to what level. So when you look at having a structured maintenance strategy, you're talking about a policy and a strategy and process that underpin it. You also have to take in mind the culture of the organization and the culture of the people that ultimately will own those processes. And that's owning those processes from the manager down to owning the processes to the technician or the contractor. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Or the contractor. This is outside your organization.
Yeah.
That is going to be physically doing the job. Now, from a contractor perspective, it's kind of a little bit easier to say, look, I'm going to impose this culture on you, because if you don't do what I say as the asset owner, I'm probably not going to use you again, and you're not going to get more invoices out of me. So that's a little bit easier. However, again, getting back, it's making sure you get that data back from the contractor, because that is your gold. That is what's going to feed your strategies. Internally, it's a bit more difficult, because you're right. We've got, the guys that have been there since your dot that know the asset, and I don't need a work order, and I don't need to use that mobile device. And it's a case of sharing from their perspective the business benefit, not only to the organization that's paying their paycheck, but the business benefit to them. But let me tell you, if a maintenance guy can find a way that he can, I'm in Australia now, so I'm going to use an analogy for Australian. If the maintenance guy can find a way of getting to the pub on a Friday a little bit earlier, he will. Yeah. So a lot of the time they'll see common sense and say, hey, this is actually better for me. These are intelligent guys that are actually maintaining these assets, so they can see where this goes. So you just got to lay it out on the line. They're usually methodical thinkers. And when they see the increased, the reduction, if you like, in tool time that they have to do, but they get the increased benefit from it, they usually come on board. Inclusion is the key. I've done it a couple of times with guys where I've introduced new systems, and inclusion is in the key. They need to feel an ownership of the processes, and once they do that, they feel an ownership of the technology that's underpinning it.
Yeah, you're spot on. I agree with you 100%, and it's going to happen whether you like it or not. It's this, Jeannie. Whether if you believe in the old way or the new way, it's going to happen, and they're going to force you into, and rightly so, not a negative force, but an encouragement.
A footnote to that. Sorry, yes, Scott. A footnote to that is also the application themselves. Ease of use. You show a guy something that's complex and has got 100 fields on the screen. It's like leading a horse to water that doesn't smell real good. He's not going to do it. So again, having solutions that are configurable, can be made easy to use, absolute key.
I like it. I like it a lot. Hey, are you active out on LinkedIn?
I am. Yes, I am on LinkedIn. You can reach me on the LinkedIn profile. It's David Whitfield.
Now, there's got to be more than one David Whitfield out there, right?
There is.
So type in Infor. Go type David Whitfield, Infor, boom. I'm sure there's not many David Whitfields out there in Infor.
You're right. There's only one, I believe, anyway. So, yeah, if you look at David Whitfield at Infor, and the first thing I'll come is something to do with asset management, that will definitely be me.
There you go. All right, you listeners out there, we're going to have to wrap this up. I am going to have all the contact information for Mr. David on the other side, and as well as on his landing page after this particular podcast. So stay tuned, because I'll know when you leave, so you can't leave. So we will talk on the other side. Thank you very much. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
Hey, thank you again for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. That is David Whitfield, Down Under. Isn't that cool that technology is allowing us to be able to really sort of, and I mean, I guess that's one of the positive signs of COVID. I'm able to really interact with great people from all around the world, and the technology allows that to happen. You got to say that that's pretty damn cool. I do. It's pretty damn cool. All right. Infor EAM is Infor EAM is the product. Fantastic tech. It's right in line with managing risk, saving money, making money, and doing it with a sense of technology that is second to none. It's fantastic. Great solution, great people, great company all around. Go out to industrialtalk.com. Once again, we're creating a collaborative environment, a collaborative platform that is featuring the best in operations, the best in leadership, the best in emerging technologies and technology EAM, as well as sales, marketing, branding strategies, and finance. Where else are you going to go? IndustrialTalk.com is where you need to go, and you need to sign up, and you need to participate, and you need to collaborate. thank you very much once again for joining the podcast. You're bold, you're brave, you dare greatly. Thank you very much for what you do. We will be back with another great interview shortly.